Hey everybody, welcome to another deep dive. So today, we're diving into some news that's probably been making waves if you live in North Texas like we do. Macy's is closing stores.
Yeah.
And not just like one or two, we're talking about 5.
A whole bunch.
Yeah, a whole bunch right in our backyard. And our main source for this deep dive is this article from WFAA. They're the local ABC affiliate, and they really get into the nitty-gritty. So get ready, folks, because we're going to see what this all means for our local economy.
Absolutely.
And maybe even think about the future of retail as a whole.
Yeah, it's fascinating. This isn't just some random thing happening in isolation. This is like if you held a magnifying glass up to the entire department store industry. They've been struggling for a while now. And the rise of online shopping, Amazon, all these specialty online stores, it's totally shifted how we shop.
Oh, absolutely. Like I can order fuzzy socks from my phone while I'm waiting in line for coffee. Yeah. When was the last time you actually walked into a department store just to browse?
Right, exactly. And that's the pressure that Macy's is under. This WFAA article calls it their bold new chapter strategy. Sounds pretty grand, doesn't it?
It does.
But really, they're closing 66 stores across the country. And get this, 6 of those are in Texas.
6 in Texas.
Wow.
And of those 6, 5 are right here in North Texas.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. We're talking the Fairview location, the shops at Willow Bend in Plano, the one in Southlake Town Square, Fort Worth's West Bend, and the Highlands of Flower Mound. That's a lot of stores.
That's a big impact for sure. It makes you wonder why those specific locations though, right? Like what makes one Macy's a go-forward store? That's what they're calling them.
Right.
And another one ends up on the chopping block. If you look at the locations that are closing, it's a real mix. Some are in these malls that haven't been doing so well, and others are those standalone stores.
So maybe it's not as simple as just online versus in-store shopping then.
You got it. It's way more complicated than that. There are a bunch of factors at play. Think about things like foot traffic visibility. How's the overall economy doing in the area around the store?
Yeah, makes sense.
Department stores have a ton of overhead. Rent staffing inventory. So if a location isn't bringing in enough money, well, it makes sense they might cut their losses.
For sure. And then you also got to think about those ripple effects. We're talking about jobs lost, the potential hit to the local economy.
Yeah.
You see a big anchor store like Macy's closing, and it can make people wonder, is the whole mall next?
Right. And malls are already fighting an uphill battle as it is. People's shopping habits have totally changed. Convenience is king these days. You can get almost anything delivered to your door now. So malls need to offer something you just can't get online. Something experiential, a sense of community. Think about places like North Park Center.
Oh, that's a good point. The Macy's there isn't closing. That one seems like kind of an outlier.
It-
What do you think makes North Park so different? What makes it a go-forward store in this bold new chapter they're talking about?
Well, first off, you're right, it is different. North Park is known for being like a high-end shopping destination. You've got those luxury brands there. Alongside your more everyday stores, they have a great mix of shopping, dining, and entertainment. They're always doing events, art installations, things that get people excited to actually go there. It's not just about shopping, it's a whole outing.
Yeah, you're hitting on something there, I think. I remember in the article, Macy's CEO Tony Spring. He talks about focusing their investments on stores where the customers are, quote, already responding positively. Kind of sounds like corporate jargon.
It does.
But maybe what he's really saying is successful stores these days have to be more than just places to buy things.
Absolutely. It's about creating an experience that draws people in, something you just can't get from clicking around on Amazon. Think about things like personalized service, selections that are curated and really reflect the local community, maybe even some fun surprises thrown in.
So maybe that's the key for department stores. And maybe even retail as a whole. They need to give people a reason to get off their phones and get out the door. But before we go too far down that road, let's take a step back and look at what these closures mean for North Texas specifically. 5 stores is a lot.
It is.
And that impacts a ton of people.
You're right. And that's where it gets real for people listening. We're talking about the people who work at those stores, their families, the local businesses that depend on that foot traffic from Macy's shoppers. It really has a domino effect.
Yeah, it really does make you think. On the one hand, we're talking about these big ideas like the future of retail and what makes a store successful these days. But on the other hand, there are real people whose lives are being affected by these closures.
Exactly. We can't forget about the human side of this story. And, when you think about the impact on North Texas, it goes way beyond just the employees who work at those 5 stores.
It's like that saying, a pebble in a pond.
Yeah.
Creating ripples that spread outward.
Perfect analogy. Think about all those local businesses near those Macy's. Less foot traffic means fewer customers for everyone. And then there's the loss of sales tax revenue for the cities and counties. You know that money funds important things. Schools, roads, public services, it's a big deal.
So it's not just about empty storefronts then. We're talking about a potential hit to the whole community.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what can be done. What happens to those employees? What happens to those vacant spaces?
Well, first off, I think it's important to recognize that retail jobs are changing. The traditional model of working in a department store might not be as common in the future. We need to help those folks transition to new roles, maybe in areas like e-commerce or logistics, maybe even help them become entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that makes sense. Help them adapt to the new landscape. But what about those empty stores? Do they just become like ghost towns?
Not necessarily. We're already seeing some pretty creative solutions. Some cities are turning those spaces into community centers, co-working spaces, even indoor farms. It's all about rethinking what those spaces can be and finding ways to make them relevant to the community.
I like that, turning a challenge into an opportunity. And maybe that's the bigger takeaway here. The retail world is definitely changing, and we all need to adapt. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing. It could be a chance for innovation and growth.
Absolutely. If we think back to North Park, they've totally embraced that idea of evolution. They haven't just sat around waiting for customers. They've actively found ways to create an experience that people want to be a part of.
They've made themselves a destination. But not every mall, every retail space can be North Park. What about those struggling malls that don't have that luxury appeal?
Well, they need to find their own thing, their own unique draw. Maybe that means focusing on local businesses and independent stores, creating a space that feels more community-driven.
It's almost like a curated marketplace.
Exactly. It's about creating a sense of place, a sense of discovery.
So we've talked about the economic impact, the need to adapt, the potential for creative solutions. But there's another piece of this I think we should touch on, and that's the emotional impact.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Because for a lot of people, especially those who grew up with these stores, these closures represent more than just some shift in retail. It's like losing a familiar landmark, a place that holds a lot of memories.
It's like losing a piece of your childhood, or even adulthood. You remember those back-to-school shopping trips with your parents? Finding the perfect outfit for a special occasion? These places become part of our lives.
And those memories, those experiences, that's something online shopping just can't replace. It's that personal touch, the interactions with salespeople, the atmosphere of the store.
Maybe that's why some people are so resistant to online shopping. It's not just about convenience, it's about that emotional connection.
Exactly. And for some folks, the closure of these stores feels like losing that connection, losing a part of themselves even. I think it's important to acknowledge those feelings and find ways to preserve those memories.
Maybe local historical societies or museums could help, documenting the history of these stores, collecting stories and things like that.
That's a great idea. It's about honoring the past, even as we move towards the future. And speaking of the future, let's zoom back out to the bigger picture. We've talked about what these closures mean for North Texas, but what does this mean for the retail industry as a whole?
Are we watching the death of the department store? Is this the end of an era?
I don't think I'd go that far. I think it's more like we're seeing an evolution. Department stores as a concept, they're not inherently bad or anything, but they definitely need to adapt to the changing needs and expectations of customers.
So it's not just about selling stuff anymore. It's about creating an experience, a sense of community, a connection with the customer.
You nailed it. And those retailers who can make that shift successfully, they're the ones who are going to thrive.
It's like survival of the fittest retail edition. But okay, enough doom and gloom. Let's end this part of the deep dive on a more positive note. We've talked a lot about what retailers need to do. But what about the shoppers? What can they do?
That's a great question, and I think the answer is pretty simple. Be a conscious consumer. Be mindful of where you spend your money. Support businesses that share your values, that offer experiences you enjoy, businesses that contribute to your community.
It's like voting with your wallet,
Right.
Making choices that reflect the kind of retail landscape you want to see.
Exactly. And if you're looking for inspiration, think back to those go-forward stores we talked about. What are they doing well? What can other businesses learn from their success?
Yeah, what can we as shoppers learn from them? Lots to think about. And we'll continue unpacking all of this when we come back for the final part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
We're back now, and this whole deep dive into Macy's closing stores, it's really got me thinking about my own shopping habits. It's so easy to just shop online, But I gotta admit, there's a part of me that kind of misses going to actual stores. Yeah, I get that. We've been dancing around this idea this whole time. Convenience is great, but it's not everything. What makes you want to actually get off the couch and go to a store?
Hmm, good question. For me, it's about finding something unique.
Yeah.
Something you can't just click and buy online. It's that feeling of discovering something cool, like an unexpected treasure you weren't even looking for.
Yeah, it's totally different. Scrolling through endless pages online versus a curated experience in person. And I think that's what some of these retailers that are struggling are missing. They need to give you a reason to pick them over the ease of online shopping.
What does that look like? What would make a store worth visiting in 2025?
Well, think about North Park again. They've created this destination that offers way more than just shopping. They have events, art installations, a mix of high-end and everyday stores. They've tapped into something that goes beyond just buying stuff.
It's about a community, right? Creating a space where people want to hang out, connect, and be inspired.
Exactly. And that can look like a lot of different things. Maybe it's a bookstore that has author readings and book clubs, or a clothing store that does styling workshops, a coffee shop that showcases local artists. It's about that sense of place, that feeling of belonging.
It's about offering something real, something that reflects the people and the area. Remember those empty Macy spaces we were talking about? Imagine if those became something that truly served the community.
I like that. Maybe a co-working space for small businesses, a community garden, a pop-up market for local artists. There are so many possibilities. It's about looking at these spaces with fresh eyes and figuring out how to make them relevant to the people who live nearby.
And maybe that's the good that comes out of all of this. Maybe the closing of these big chain stores creates a space for smaller, more community-focused businesses to come in and create something really special.
I think you're right. It's about shifting our thinking away from this retail apocalypse narrative and instead seeing the potential for change and innovation.
It's about choosing to see the opportunity within the challenge. And I think that's a powerful message for everyone, whether you're a business owner or just a shopper.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just retail, too. It's about how we choose to be a part of our communities, how we support local businesses, how we build that sense of place and belonging.
It's about making choices that show the kind of world we want to live in. So as we wrap up this deep dive on Macy's closures, let's leave you with this thought. The future of retail, and maybe even the future of our communities, it's in our hands. Let's choose to support those businesses that inspire us, that connect us, the ones that make our world a little bit brighter.
And remember, every time you buy something, it's like a vote. You're voting for the kind of world you want to see. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, happy shopping and take care.